Ray, I will try and communicate a lot with you through chat, so keep your eye on there. All right, it is 7:02. I'm going to begin tonight's meeting, because we have a lot to cover and the people can catch up as they sign on. The Civic Association is holding this meeting by Zoom because over the past few years, we have found that we are reaching more villagers, and by virtue of having a recording, others who can't attend tonight can watch the recording at their convenience. So welcome to the Cotuit-Santuit Civic Association Budgets and Candidate Night. My name is Carol Zais, and I'm the president of the Civic Association. I would like to inform everyone that this meeting is being recorded. Now, I would like to go over the couple of procedures. Because too many
Now you can hear me.
Too many open microphones lead to background distractions. We are asking all attendees to remain muted unless
Thanks,
and
Jim.
until you are called upon. And to
If
remove,
Carol could call me, I could get the questions over the phone.
all right, we're still working with getting Ray online. I don't have Ray's phone number, so Chief, if you would, I think you have my phone number.
I'm going to get it from Ray in the chat.
I do, and I'll text you his contact info momentarily, Carol.
Okay, thank you. And so back to, and mute yourself after you have spoken. The order of procedure tonight is we're going to do the budget discussion first, followed by the introduction of the candidates. There will be opportunities to ask questions of district official after each separate departmental presentation. When we get to the introduction of candidates, we will first introduce those who appear on the ballot and then open the floor to any who may be wishing to seek to run as a write-in candidate. Finally, type your questions when you have any questions regarding the presentation that you're hearing. Type the questions into the chat function, and after the presentation is over for that department, I will read the questions and get your answers. If you have a strong preference to ask the question yourself, you can enter your name and address in the chat function, and we will call upon you when it is your turn to speak. I want to first, Jim's going to pull up the spreadsheets that we're going to be talking about.
Shall
And
I start?
if you go to page 2, Jim.
Thumbs up if you want me to start, Jim.
Not yet. So I'm going to ask, I want to just orient everybody to the columns that we're going to be discussing. The first two columns on the left are the article number and account title. This represents the article number in the warrant and the subject line items that the number relates to. These are the same article numbers that are in the warrant that is currently posted on the Cotuit Fire District website, and that we will be voting on at the annual district meeting next week. The column of FY fiscal year 22 is the actual budget that was spent that year. FY 23 is the budgeted amount because the fiscal year doesn't end until June 30th. So obviously we don't have the actual numbers yet in hand, but these are the numbers that were approved at last year's annual fire district meeting. The FY 24 proposed line column is starting on July 1st is the budget we will be voting on next week at the annual district meeting. The change this year is a change between fiscal year 2023 budgeted amounts and the fiscal year 2024 proposed budget. It includes both increases or decreases. So to be clear, this is comparing an FY 22 proposed budget to the FY 23 approved budget. The comment section just contains notes that you will see from time to time for the presenter. So we will now start with Ray Perrone, District Treasurer, to present the Finance Department budget. And when he is done, we will open up for questions. Go ahead, Ray.
Thank you, Carol. I can hear you now, and I'll go back to the antiquated earphones. I'd like to begin with just a brief overview of what this budget looks like. And I'm going to do that by walking from our current budget to the proposed budget for fiscal '24. Our current budget is $5,869,000. Wages, which are 48% of our budget, are forecast to go up 9.7% or $236,000. Expenses, which are about 20% of our budget, are forecast to go up 4.7%. This is across all departments. Debt service goes up 19,000. The library, 1,000. Employee benefits, 27,000. But those increases are more than offset by a reduction in the contribution to our stabilization fund and the limited number of special articles that are proposed for next year. Overall, this reduces the appropriations that we are putting forth by 319,000, making this year's budget down by approximately 5% to $5,550,000. Funding is a different story. Local receipts of $2,114,000, which is ambulance, water receipts, and others, are down by 16%. And debt is down by 25% just because we don't have that many debt eligible special articles. The result is that the tax levy will increase by about 6.4%. Now let's go through the details. The finance department based its wage increase on the Department of Labor March cost of living increase of 5%. There was a merit increase for the assistant treasurer, bringing the overall wage increase to 5.7%. The other notable items that are different this year than last, we've entered into a 3-year agreement with our auditors at a fixed price over those 3 years, which is at $17,500. We also have to provide for the cost of the actuarial study of our OPEB trust, which is about $2,500, making our budget $20,000, a substantial increase of 14% in this area. Bond transfer is also up by a substantial amount, and that's due to the fact that we probably will have 3 separate bond issues in the year, and that's due to the timing of each of the requirements. I'm going to try to consolidate this to the extent possible, but there are limitations on how much I can do in that area because of regulations about getting money before you spend it. Insurance is up 5% based on the agent's estimate. The other major change is we have, the one I'm skipping over is taxes. Taxes are going up by virtue of the 9.7% wage increase that I mentioned in the overview. And then finally, we're providing for 2 district meetings this year. The annual district meeting for next year, plus a special district meeting to deal with school property issues. So overall, I can't move it. The summary is the wages are up 5.6%, expenses up 7%, no special articles, for an overall 6.7% increase in the finance budget. We want to pause for questions now, or go on to the fire department.
We're gonna, am I unmuted? We're going to pause for questions. Please type them in your chat bar down at the bottom.
If I can get down there. So far, all I see are the directions. I don't see any other questions. Wait a minute, maybe Graham still. No,
Please put in any questions to everybody. I'm not seeing any. More minutes. Jessica Rapp Grassetti is asking you, have you accounted for increased insurance expense with school property?
that was provided for in the special articles that were passed 2 years ago. So there's no need to duplicate that funding at this point.
Okay. All right. There'll be, oh, wait.
Yep.
There's a question from Norm. Wait, budgeted options for school property uses. I'm not sure I understand that
I
question.
don't, yeah, I don't understand the question.
Would you like to be unmuted? Could you unmute them, Jim?
Sure.
You're unmuted.
Am I unmuted? This is Norm's wife, Lee. Hi.
Hi, Lee.
I was just wondering if there is any budgeting for figuring out what would be the best use of the school property.
2 years
You
ago,
know-
we actually provided for that in a special article. Those funds are unspent and available for spending on that purpose.
Wait, you're muted again. Jim,
He's not muted.
Unmute, sorry. I'm more of an in-person person.
Yep.
I was just wondering what that amount was and how you're going to proceed with suggestions for the use of the building. What is the plan for that? You know, is it going to be community building? Is it going to be torn down? Is it going to be fire station? There are a lot of rumors going around, and I'm just curious how the plan is to proceed, and there has to be a budget for that.
Well, there is, as I said, there is a budget. It was appropriated 2 years ago. The exact format of how the Prudential Committee intends to determine determine and evaluate the various alternatives has not been set yet.
So the budget is based on just
Based on-
projection?
But it was based on our best estimate of what it would take to evaluate alternatives. And that was 2 years ago.
Yeah,
2 years ago at the annual district meeting, we approved a budget, a little over $200,000, if I'm correct.
I think it was 275
Yep,
for that purpose. There was also
do a study.
funds for operating the building for a year while we made those determinations.
so in that budget, I'm just curious, like I'm walking over there now and there's nobody mowing the lawn. Is that something that's in the budget for that?
Once we take title to it, those budgets become available. They were not available until we did take title. The
Okay.
town has now, and I'm not going to be technically correct about this, the town has agreed to transfer it. That transfer has not I believe, actually taken place.
Until we vote on it.
Exactly. We have to
Right.
vote on it next week. It's, I believe it's Article 18 in the
Right.
town warrant.
Yes.
So
Yes.
once that is voted, then we go back to the funds being available for the two articles of doing their study and
Carol,
maintenance.
I think you have to actually have a transfer of title. I
Yeah.
think that simply says that the district wishes to accept the property. The town has expressed its desire to transfer. it. I
Right.
think there has to be, if you will, a legal closing to make that effective.
Of course, yes. But that has to happen, Lee, before any of this other stuff. So
Okay.
that will be going on after next week, depending on how the district votes.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay?
correct.
All right. I appreciate you unmuting me.
There's another question from Natalie. If she understood correctly, that collections were down significantly, which would result in the need for a higher tax levy. Can you elaborate at the appropriate time? That would be now.
I can, it gets into what is free cash. And again, free cash is the measurement of basically receipts against expenditures for the fiscal year ended 2022. So June of last year generated about $490,000 of free cash. The previous year, 2021, generated approximately $1.2 million of free cash. The difference was both on the receipt side and the expenditure side. If I recall correctly, taxes were down about 260,000. Water revenue was down approximately 300,000. Expenditures overall went up around 400,000. And that one of the major elements of that was in 2021, we had the large finance restructuring, which basically eliminated debt service for that year, which is about a $400,000 bill. So that accounted for one of those big swings. And those were the major players in that action. Revenue was down, both in taxes and in water, and the expenditures were up.
Okay. The next question is, please remind us how much the district has budgeted for insurance. I'm not sure if she means in general or budgeted for insurance for the school. Doesn't say.
If it's the school, I'd have to go back and look.
Okay. But okay, so let's just do for the fire district, what has.
Just, if you
budget-
just roll the screen up. And if I can get rid of the chat box, the $127,000 is for property and liability. That covers automotive, liability coverage for our properties, as well as property coverage itself.
Okay, I got clarification. It is how much is the insurance for the school in that article from 2 years ago? Did you
It
say?
was based on an agent's estimate. I'm not sure.
We have it at the end of the material, right?
Yeah, I'll have to come to that, but I'll have
Okay.
to see what the breakdown was when we get to that point.
Okay. And just going back, since we do not currently own the property, it is up to the town to mow the lawn. And we can certainly reach out to them to see if they will come and do that, or where we are in their schedule of mowing.
In addition, they're going to continue to own the field. So
Right.
that'll be their responsibility.
Exactly. All right, any other questions? Did I get everybody? Yes, I did. Okay, we're going to do water commissioners, a water budget next. I'd like to introduce Tom Hoppenstadt, the chair of the water department, along with our water superintendent, Chris Weissman.
Thank you, Carol. This is Tom Hoppenstedt, and I'm going to hand this off to Commissioner Robinson, Mark Robinson, for his presentation.
Okay,
Thank you, Tom. And Mark Robinson, Water Commissioner. We have spent several meetings going over both the personnel evaluations for the staff and the superintendent. We have decided that they deserve merit increases. We're also proposing that they be a COLA plus merit increases. So we have a fairly substantial change in the salaries. This is based on the fact that we're trying to bring our staff up to comparable positions in other comparable districts around the Cape. And so we've done some research looking at Mashpee, Centerville, Osterville, Marston's Mills, Barnstable Village. And these are all places that are comparable to us, and we're basically in competition with them for personnel. We don't like to think of our staff as being poached by other places, but it does happen, and it's important for the district to compensate our staff, which is, besides the pipes and the pumps, is really the true asset of the department and for the district as a whole. They're very hardworking. I've heard nothing but good praise for the service provided by the staff, friendly, prompt, responsive, and we want to keep them. It's a public safety, it's a public health issue to make sure that the staff is well trained. They all have their licenses that they're supposed to get. That brought them up to speed. And despite having some relatively younger people, they're very eager to learn, and they've been acquiring the certifications and licenses that they need. So this is the, there was a mention earlier that the water revenues have gone down. The actual excess water rates have provided a substantial surplus to the district. And if I could share my screen, I could show you some of the research that we've done on that. Do you have the ability to share? Let me share my screen.
You should be able to do that, Mark.
Okay. It says I can't screen share while the other participant is sharing. So somebody's sharing the budget. All right, let's see if that works. Yeah, so this is a recent analysis that we've produced, and you can see how water rates have resulted in significant surplus for the department in the last several years. And so I don't know, this is just looking at the excess water revenue. I think the other revenue sources have stayed fairly the same. So I'm not sure where which books are being used to say that the water revenues have gone down. I think they've been increasing, and as you can see here. So anyway, so we go back to the budget.
we're going. Hold on.
Sorry, I didn't mean to upset the ARPA card here. Thanks, Jim. Overall, we have a total budget increase of 8.16, which is not out of line with the other departments. If you scroll down, you can see the different sources of where we get our money is including the cell tower. We share in revenues that are provided regionally. We have the meter fee, and we also have the excess water revenues. So all those put together provide the revenues for the department. And we don't have a big capital expense in the next year or so. We do have always on the horizon, the unfortunate event that may occur where we have to do a water treatment plant at some point, particularly given the emerging contaminants such as PFAS. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right.
Or
Let's see
if Superintendent Wiseman or Commissioner Hoppenstedt would like to chime in.
There's a question to Ray about have the water revenues gone down as he stated. I guess there's a,
Free cash is, which includes the water receipts, is based on the figures that we submit to the state and are audited. So free cash is basically based on audited results, and that's what I was quoting. I'm not sure what Mark was quoting in his summary and his slide. The free cash is something that is certified by the state. And it's based on the actual results, actual collections, not billings, but actual collections for the fiscal years. So I would, I'm not really sure. I can't speak to Mark's figures, but I can speak to the figures that we submit to the state.
Well, the source was the annual reports of the district, and I'm not going to argue with the treasurer. Are there any other questions?
in case it comes up next week during the annual meeting, that this might be an area to get some clarification on, if possible, in the next week.
Yeah, I'm sure we can.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, thank you, Mark. We are now going to going back to Ray to do finish his presentation on the public buildings and the streetlights before we get to the fire.
Okay. Freedom Hall has basically the same wage basis as the finance department. The only changes that we experience here is to adjust to running rates for electricity, ground maintenance, and we have the reduction in building maintenance because we don't foresee the need for furniture replacement at least next year. We did some replacement this year, which should suffice for fiscal 24. So in summary, we have wages going up 7.5%, operating expenses down 2%, and there are no special articles for an overall increase of actually a slight no, it's actually level funded. Streetlights are really the same story. We made a minor adjustment for running rate on electricity. We have been very fortunate about maintenance. We still have to provide for that maintenance because we don't know the unknowns that can happen. And so the streetlights are level funded.
Okay. Did you?
I presume
want
we're
to-
going to take questions at the end? Or
You want, yeah, did you want to go into the,
because I saw a question come up. Someone was,
there's two questions, but did you want to do that before you do the reserve fund?
The reserve fund is level funded.
Okay.
So let's talk about the questions.
Okay, so there's a question about from Tom Hoppenstedt, is free cash the same as the water revenue?
Free cash is the calculation is in simple terms, uh, receipts less expenditures, less the outstanding uncollected tax levy.
Okay,
So I'm not sure I understand Tom's question. Is he saying that water revenue is part of the free cash calculation? If that's Tom's question.
okay, we'll see what he writes up next. What accounts for the 90% increase in maintenance was asked?
In the grounds maintenance was very expensive. It was very hard to find someone to take care of that. We actually had a neighbor do some of that maintenance in the past, and that neighbor is no longer available to do it. So we had to contract for that service, and it was a substantial increase.
The next question is, does every employee of the district receive an annual cost of living increase?
Well, in the finance department, the clerk, the assistant treasurer, and myself all received a 5% cost of living adjustment, as did the maintenance individual at Freedom Hall. The fire department was ruled by the contract,
Right.
which did have a cost of living adjustment, along with other items that were included in the contract. Normally the step increases, and also they incorporated the educational fund. So that made that increase look larger than just cost of living. So I would say that yes, every employee in the district does get a cost of living adjustment in various amounts.
Okay. Tom wrote back, so to clarify, it is not the same. It is not the same, and the water revenues have gone up.
Well, I'll check the figures, but when I looked at the results, and I'm looking at overall water collections, they did go down. And if fellas remember, from 21 to 22, there was a drop in usage. Does that ring a bell, Chris?
Right.
Sorry, you said in 20 to 21,
21 to 22,
He
there
said
was a
20 to
drop
there
in
might
usage.
have been a drop in usage, but we didn't have a drop in what we brought in for we had a increase in cost.
Well,
So
let-
our actual, what we
let's
brought in.
verify the
is more than we
figures.
looked for.
I
Yeah.
mean, when I look at the free cash calculation, that's what the numbers are telling me. I'll go back. I'm happy to go back and check that.
I think that would be great. Thank you. Next question is regarding the maintenance. What are the grounds that are being maintained? Freedom Hall, ? School, ? It's not the
Freedom-
school because we do not own the school yet, so it's just Freedom Hall.
Correct.
Water revenue figures are on page, are on page 16 of the workbook. FY 21 is not listed. So I think that's because you were referring to FY 21.
Yeah, well, it was a change from 21 to 22 that I was trying to explain the reduction in free cash. And as I said, free cash is receipts less expenditure. So I was looking at the changes in each of those. We'll go back and look at the numbers, and we can publish what the the results actually are.
Okay. It looks like that's it right now for questions. So Jim, we're gonna give Jim a moment to bring up the fire department's presentation.
Yeah.
And I do believe we have our newly appointed Deputy Chief Shane Clark will be doing the presentation, along with some feedback from the fire department's chair, Fire Commissioner's Chair, Kevin Conley, and Chief Sean Brown.
Carol, if I may do a quick introduction as we're getting ready to bring things up here.
Yep.
First of all, on behalf of the Katuitt Fire Department and the commissioners, would like to thank you and the Civic Association for the opportunity to present this evening. With that, what you'll see when the presentation comes up is we've divided the presentation into, with the budget, obviously, into the past, the present, and the future. To give everybody a view of what went on in 2022, where we are 2023 to date. And then we'll get into the budget as we talked about. And then there's a lot of moving parts right now at the department with regards to some upcoming things. So we want to take a look at the future. So we're going to have Shane kick things off, Deputy Clark, newly minted deputy as it would be. So we'll have him set things off as soon as we're ready to go here. Perfect. Thank you, Deputy. It's all yours.
Thank you, Commissioner Conley. I echo what the commissioners said. We thank the Civic Association for having us here this evening. We just got a quick presentation just to review what we've done over the last couple of years, where we're at this year, and what we're looking at in our future. So fiscal year 2022 is the last full year that we have data for. We're still going through fiscal year 23. As you can see, in fiscal year 22, we did a total of 874 responses. 62% of our responses are EMS related, which is in line with the national trend. We did respond to 6 building fires during that year. And over the past 10 years, we've seen a 15% increase in responses. So every year, our responses have been increasing incrementally, a couple 2 or 3%. The biggest noticeable trend in the last couple of years is the incidence of overlapping calls. So this occurs while the on-duty crew is already committed on an incident. And the only way we can ensure that that second call is properly cared for is to rely on off-duty personnel to respond to the station. And more and more, we are relying on mutual aid from our neighboring communities to help with those second calls. Fiscal year 20, we had 44 overlapping calls. Fiscal year 22, we had 92 overlapping calls. And to date, in this fiscal year, we've had 72 incidents where multiple calls have come in at the same time. And we've had to rely on some of our neighbors to help us manage those calls. For this year, to date, we've responded to over 700 different incidents. I think more importantly, from the organization standpoint, over the last year, we've seen a tremendous increase in community activities from the members of the fire department. We're very grateful for the support that we receive from the residents, the visitors, the elected officials, and we're really trying to do our best to reach out to, all members of the community, and not just those 700 or so times we have to go out in an emergency incident. There's been a number of community activities we've been included in. The one that the chief and I think the Board of Fire Commissioners are the most proud of is the top one there. We're in the process of developing a risk assessment, a risk assistance, a program for residents at risk. This came from the members of the fire department who, routinely go out and assist the, provide medical care to those that require it. But it's some of the members of the organization have identified a number of residents who could use our assistance, maybe not in an emergent situation, but just through their daily activities or helping them and reduce risk to themselves so that they don't need to call us in an emergent situation. So This is a program that, like I said, the membership is brought to our attention. They're working on. I could speak for the chief and I think Commissioner Conley were extremely grateful for this program and proud of the members of the Katuitt Fire Department for putting this together and, just for their activities within the community and being involved, like I said, instead of just those emergency incidents that they're required on. Next, we just have some, organizational milestones that we've gone through over the last 2 years. Chief Rude retired from the Katuitt Fire after 5 years of service as the chief of department. Deputy AE Chief Joe Pouliot retired after 40 years of service to the village of Katuitt. Deputy Pouliot, I think as many of you know, started as a young man as a call firefighter and dedicated many years and a lot of his time to the village, and we're grateful for his service to the fire department. Chief Brown was appointed chief of the fire department in 2022. As Carol mentioned, I was appointed just recently, March 24th, as the new deputy fire chief to work alongside Chief Brown. We have finalized a shared ambulance agreement. This is going to help us with those overlapping calls. I think Commissioner Conley will touch on this a little more in the presentation. And then most recently, we've obtained new wildland firefighting gear that's going to allow us to better protect the village from wildland fires. New strategies and tactics as they relate to urban wildland interface and how we can manage not only wildland fires, but protect property at the same time. So we have a number of new equipment that we will touch up on a little bit later as well. At this point, I'll pass it off to Chief Brown, who will go over his proposed fiscal year 24 budget.
Chief, you may be muted.
You're unmuted. Go ahead.
Okay, there we go. All right, very good. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you, Deputy. Thank you to the Civic Association, the Board of Commissioners, and the residents of the village. Thank you for this time and this opportunity to present. The proposed FY24 budget has a labor and salaries increase of 9.69%. And again, that's contractual obligations associated with the local 3642 contract, as well as the my salary and the deputy's salary. Other expenses and the operating and miscellaneous expenses went up 4.69%. One of the largest drivers in that was anticipated increase in the cost of fuel that we contract with COM. For that, as well as the potential to have the second ambulance on the road here in the near future. And as the deputy indicated, that will come up in an additional slide. As far as capital expenses go, they're down 64%, which is largely due in part to not keeping the brush breaker in the CIP and utilizing the newly acquired UTV and forestry equipment that the organization has. And overall, our budget request is down 0.88% over fiscal year 23. Pending any questions, I'll turn it over to
Okay, I think we'll open up for questions at the end. Thank you, Chief. So a couple things, 2 slides, and we'll finish off here. I just wanted to point out a couple things to the village. The current fire station was built in 1938. So right now we're in the process of doing a needs assessment. I've been doing it for a little bit now, trying to understand, what is needed for the department, what's needed for the village. Point out a couple areas with regards to clean area, walk-in medical, and modernization or apparatus. The reason those are listed is as we go forward, when we purchase apparatus, we need to spend additional money to customize our apparatus to fit into the bays that we currently have. So that's a concern to us. With regards to the medical area, walk-in medical, right now, when people come into the station, they basically sit out in the lobby to have a conversation, so they have no privacy at all. So one of the areas we're looking at is how we can improve that. And then the top one, and I left that specifically for the end because I think it's important for everybody to understand that when a crew comes back from a fire or from a particularly tough situation and they have to change in the bays. They have to take off all their gear in the bay. They go inside. Now, the reason they do that is to try to avoid contamination of the living area, right? And the fact of the matter is, some stuff still filters in. So one of the big areas that we're looking at is how we're going to be able to solve that. And there's lots of technologies out there, but that is one of our major concerns. With regards to, and I know there's been a lot of conversation about this with regards to where the station, the new station may go. We frankly, as fire commissioners, do not have a position on that, except we need a new station and it needs to go somewhere in the village. We're looking at whether or not we can renovate the current property at 54 and 58 High, if we can make that work, and would have to make, we would have to keep the station operational while we do that. So we're looking at that. We're also looking, if it becomes appropriate for another district-owned building, you can input whatever you'd like there, or perhaps an undeveloped land. So we're looking at all three options. All options look good to us as long as we're able to move forward and get a new firehouse shortly or in the near future. Chief, could you go to the next one if you would, please? Quick view of equipment. We will be coming forward shortly to move to get a, not this year, but probably next year, we'll be doing some funding with regards to replacement of 263. 263 has been in service since 2016. Excuse me. It's been in service for quite a while now. I don't have that right in front of me now, but it's been in service for quite some time. We need to replace that one. Brush breaker, we're in the process of building a proposal to move that to Joint Base Cape Cod. We believe it needs about $200,000 worth of work. And if we move it to Joint Base Cape Cod, they would do the work on it. And when that work is complete and it's operational, it would be available to the district of, to a fire district as appropriate from a run call card point of view. The chief referenced the wildland firefighting equipment. And I really want to point out that that task vehicle down there, the utility task vehicle that the chief was able to acquire. With this vehicle, as you might see on the front, they can carry a stretcher on that. There's a water tank on the back of it, small one. But the fact of the matter is that can get into areas that other vehicles can't get into, to transport a patient out as an example, or to try to stop something before it gets too big. In addition to that, we have a 250-gallon skid. If anybody, a tank, which if anybody's driven by the station lately, you'll notice it's in the on the drive. And that's being worked on right now, but that can be put inside a pickup truck. It's 260, and that would be available to get into a tough area as well. Shared ambulance, we had a lot of conversations about this for the last couple of years. That comes online on 7/1/23. That's a shared resource with Sandwich, so that's a great opportunity for us. And then the final one, we have an ambulance on order to replace 262. We do not have a delivery date. We've been trying to get a delivery date and get confirmation for about 1.5 to 2 years on that, but there's a huge back order on ambulances. And as a result, that's why we don't have the shared resource yet from Sandwich, because they were waiting on theirs. So a lot of moving parts. We thought it'd be appropriate to share with the district some of that information. We changed the format up a little bit for tonight. I hope everybody found it useful. I'd appreciate your input, whether or not giving you some of the background is useful. And with that, I will turn it back to Carol and to see if anybody has any questions.
I don't see any directed right to fire right now. However, there are still some coming in regarding water. There was one, maybe Mark or Ray, could someone explain what is happening to the huge windfall in money that the water department is getting under the new rate structure? So we have been talking about that already, and I think that Ray will be looking into being able to better define that at the annual district meeting. Is that fair, Ray? Hold on, I got to unmute you. There you go.
I can talk about that at when I'm doing the wrap up. I can
Okay.
show how water revenue plays an element in the tax calculation.
Okay. And then there was a question, follow-up on the maintenance that was just clarifying that the maintenance done at Freedom Hall is spring and fall cleanup, weekly mowing and mulching at Freedom Hall. And then over to the fire department, why are salaries up so much at 9.69%? Again, that is part of the fire negotiated contract that's done every 3 years, but I'll let Kevin talk about that.
Right, so thank you, Carol. So it's a great question. Right now, with regards to that, we've moved some method in the way some accounting is done. So there was an increase as part of the contract going forward. It's a 666 increase, so 6%. And then we also took some education that was being paid differently in the past and moved it into the area where we have straight compensation. So it's a increase, but it's also from an education point of view, it's education that's really significant for Katuitt Fire District. It's significant for the fire department overall. So it's actually a good number. I think it was well done for the village. Let's put it that way.
Okay. There was a suggestion that the Katuitt Fire District add annual candidates budget night to Katuitt Currents along with election and annual meeting. We did have the annual candidates and budget night information in the Katuitt Currents in the May issue. And then the election and annual meeting goes in the May issue, also in the May issue. So they've both been out there in the various months. So. And then the last one more is mention was made of medical care. What is the fire department's obligation? Oops, sorry, my screen just switched out. What is the fire department's obligation for medical care? There is no doctor. Is obligation only ambulance? Chief, want to answer that?
Yeah, Commissioner, you'd like me to take that one?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, so the medical care referred to in the station is we frequently get walk-in medical situations where folks either start to the hospital in their vehicles and then change their mind and recognize that maybe it's better to start their care through us, and then they'll arrive at the front door. And so that in addition to the ambulance, it's that walk-in medical, if that answers the question.
Okay, and I see some.
Carol, if I may,
Yep.
just to follow up on the chief's point. The world of EMS as we know it is evolving, and currently our obligation is the ambulance. As the chief mentioned, we receive a lot of walk-in medical care, but pre-hospital EMS is evolving to a point where community paramedicine is very real and it's on the horizon, and there's the very real possibility that we may be providing care into the community, whether at the home or at the fire station, without necessarily transporting to the hospital. And the whole model of our industry is changing now. And if we're looking, into the future for a fire station, I think we need to incorporate that into the plans of the new firehouse.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you, Deputy. Appreciate that.
There's a shout out to the so important and well-deserved. I'm assuming that person is referring to the increase for the fire department salaries. And Lee, I'm thinking that you're asking about the budget and candidates night. If you look in the May issue on the far left column, there's the information about tonight's meeting. Happy to talk with you offline about. Any other questions? If not, we go back to Ray for his follow-up.
Carol, my bad.
No worries. It's always good to check on me.
Thank you, Carol.
Mhm.
Next up is district debt service. And that's composed of long-term debt for the USDA loan for the Main Street tank, the refinancing that we did in 21, and a new short-term debt. The long-term debt is predicated on the agreed upon amortization schedules, which specify principal and interest payments by year for the life of the debt instrument. The short term was for the service truck and ambulance equipment, I'll say, the new ambulance equipment, which the fire department deemed it was opportune to purchase in advance of getting the actual chassis. We financed that this year, and what's reflected in the debt service is the first annual rollover and payment of that short-term bond. So overall, it goes up 5%. We're going to use some free cash to fund that, and the balance, which basically we're using the free cash for principal, long-term principal payments, and then we'll pay the interest out of current operating or tax levy funding. Employee benefits. Employee benefits comprise our health insurance program that we provide for all employees. Those rates are set by the municipal group that we belong to that provides insurance for all municipal entities on the Cape, called Cape Cod Municipal Health Group. And they have elected to increase the their premium payments by 3% this year. And we have reflected that in our calculations. Retirement is based on the billing from the Barnstable County Retirement Authority, and that was an increase of 4.2%. They will be increasing that over the next, I think it's now 8 years, to catch up with the funding as dictated by the state. And finally, the OPEB trust is level funded for next year. We're in a very good position in our funding on OPEB, and OPEB is other post-employment benefits. It's basically the medical insurance for retirees. So overall, that goes up 3.1%. We're going to use some free cash for the OPEB and some of the retirement contribution, use some of the stabilization funds, which we put in from free cash last year, and then finally the bulk of it will be funded by the tax levy. We also go through an exercise of allocating expenses. Not all of the water department's expenses are in the water department, and some are in employee benefits. And in this case, there's about $148,000 of medical benefits that are attributable to water department employees. Obviously, the bulk is fire department. That's where our greatest manning or staffing is. And Jim is asking, why is funding higher than appropriation? Because I can't add. No, the raise in appropriation should be $200,000 less. When I proposed that, we didn't make the mathematical adjustment for raise and appropriate. So it would be 572,000.
Will that be corrected is that corrected in the warrant, or will you be mentioning that?
That will be corrected in the, not in the warrant, but actually in the wording of the motion at the annual district meeting.
Okay.
Stabilization. Stabilization is reduced significantly, our general stabilization. We put an extra $400,000 from free cash into stabilization last year. We are not going to do that this year. So that is a significant reduction. The water department is based on the bylaw that dictates a certain contribution for the number of active meters online as of December each year. Then finally, in the summary, as we go through it, you can see that the reserve is level funded at 45,000, and that's going to be raised and appropriate. Raise and appropriate is just another word for that will be funded by the tax levy. The finance and administration, 405,000, again, raised, funded by the tax levy. In the fire department, there is a operating budget, wages and expenses of 2.4 million, which will be funded by the tax levy, and $126,000 of incremental special articles. 150,000 will be debt and 11,000 will be funded by free cash. In the water department, their operating budget is 853,000 funded by the tax levy and $200,000 for repairs on the mains, which will be funded by debt. Prudential Committee, Freedom Hall, 26,000 level funded. Streetlights, 7,400 level funded. In both cases will be funded by the tax levy. Library services, 26,000 funded by free cash. Principal and interest on the budget will be funded by free cash and the tax levy, as will the employee benefits. And then finally, we have the transfers to stabilization funds for both water and general, and that will be funded by the tax levy. As we scroll down, there is a recap allowance for abatements and exemptions, and that is a figure that is dictated by the state. We've estimated that at $14,000 this year, and that's based on the 4-year average that the state has imposed on us. So here's how we're going to fund it. And basically the tax levy is the result of all the local receipts less the amount of total appropriations. So ambulance and other within the fire department is level funded at 261,000. Water department is projected at 80% of the F23 estimate. I believe the estimate is around 1,450,000. We're going to only use 1,157,000. The reason that we don't use all of the revenue to offset the tax levy is because the state, number one, audits what we include. And if we have too large of an increase, it can be rejected. The other reason that we don't do it is that if we were for any reason not able to achieve that revenue result, we would enter into a revenue deficit, which would directly increase the taxes next year. So you always want to be conservative on both the all of the local revenue categories. Free cash, we're using about 98% of that. That's money that we know is certified and we can use. And we're going to take $200,000 out of the stabilization. That's 50% of what we put in last year as a surplus of free cash. We'll use the basic use funding that is incorporated by bylaw from the water department. And then we will use debt funding to fund all of the eligible special articles. The result of this is that we believe that the tax rate will increase from $1.30 to $1.68, 6.4%. And that would mean that the average house, which arithmetically is 903,000 in the district, would have a tax bill of 1,249 for the fire district part of their total tax bill. I think that hopefully that answers the question about what do we do with the, it isn't really a windfall that the water department earns. I did a back of the envelope calculation. And when you do take their full revenue, less their expenses, special articles, and those expenses that can be allocated to the water department, it is about a break even, which says that the water department is pricing its water appropriately. Now, if you want to scroll down, we can take a look at those appropriations that were done 2 years ago, 22, for the school property. We appropriated $15,000 of legal fees. We've used some of those. Title insurance, we provided $3,000. We're not sure we're going to need that based on the type of transfer. We also included a phase 1 environmental study. Again, we're not sure that that's appropriate. I think the school committee is taking a look at that. And we have a $2,000 contingency on acquisition costs. We then provided $22,000 for operating the building for about a year while its use was determined. And that includes insurance. I believe that the question was asked, how much did we provide? $4,000 for insuring the building. That was predicated on a agent's estimate. Electricity to operate the building, about $4,000. We intend, and I think that has actually happened, they have drained all the water, so there's no water in the system at the present time. And Jim, you can correct me if I'm wrong on that. So
No, that's correct, Ray.
Thank you. So that's an expense that we don't have to face. And then we put in $10,000 for maintenance and contingencies. I believe there's a couple of broken windows I've heard reported. That is funding to take care of that. Then there was $165,000 allocated or appropriated rather to determine alternative uses. There was a project manager, if we were going to rehab the building, $40,000 that was provided. And then it was a special district meeting, so we may have doubled up that since we provided for it in the current annual budget. And I see Jessica's question. Yes, I think we will ask them to repair the windows. That kind of covers it. I'm open to questions on everything that I covered.
Thank you so much, Ray. There's one question, I think it's more of a general statement that Ken Malloy is asking, can we try for a 5% tax increase next year? And then Tom Hoppenstadt, did you say that money from the water department stabilization fund was going to be used for some expense, question mark, or expenses?
No, I did not.
Okay.
It was the basic use funds, which are as directed in the bylaws, to be used for water department capital expenditures. And that's 2 years. They bill about $3,600 of basic use each year. I accumulate it in the capital fund, and that would be the use of that.
Okay. I don't see any other questions coming in. While I give it a few more minutes, I just want to say on behalf of the Civic Associations Board, I would like to thank all of the participants tonight for taking the time to go through the budget, taking the time to bring us up to date on what's happening with the fire department and also with the water department. We truly feel it's a tremendous help to the villagers to receive this information a week before they're voting, and appreciate your extra time to do this.
I saw Chris had a question.
Yeah.
What was the tax rate? And is it $1.38? Is it $1.30 this year? We estimate, we won't know until November what the actual rate is, but we've estimated at $1.38, holding valuations constant. Valuations will definitely change, and that will have an impact on the tax rate.
Did you say $1.38? I thought you said $1.68 before. It went from one.
If I did, I misspoke.
Oh, it's
It's
$1.38.
Yeah,
So it's gone from $1.30 to $1.38.
38.
Okay, great. There's a lot of time and effort went into this planning. Looks like you really put your heads together. I'm happy as a resident. Thank you, guys. And can you please, the broken window, we did that. So Fran is saying that she's called a couple of times. You know, the Civic Association met with the town directors today, so I will follow up with them tomorrow that we have a question about getting the windows repaired before the transfer of the property, if it so happens at next week's.
Great.
All right, I think that's it. So we are now going to turn to the candidates. There are 3 who are running unopposed for 3-year terms, so 3-3. And we will start with Fire Commissioner Adam Zais. Then we will go to Prudential Committee Seth Burdick and complete the night with Water Commissioner new candidate David Sherbuck. So Adam.
Thanks, Carol. Good evening, everyone. My name is indeed Adam Zais, and I have been honored to serve for the past 6 years on the Board of Fire Commissioners, and I'm looking forward to another 3 years. Thanks in advance to your voting. I was very much involved the past year in along with my compatriot and chairperson Kevin Conley on getting the collective bargaining, negotiating with the local for the collective bargaining agreement that we have. Very, very pleased about the outcome there. Most importantly, I think with the advent of the chief Sean Brown and now the deputy chief Shane Clark, the fire department is in really good hands. The culture is terrific. If you haven't been down to the station, do so, because the next 3 years, we're going to spend a lot of time thinking about how to make changes. So I look forward to that effort. It's going to be a lot of collaboration needed from everybody in the district. So I look forward to, if you ever see me around in the village, please stop me, ask questions, happy to answer them. So I was going to be brief. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Adam. Does anybody have any questions for Adam?
Thankfully, none.
Okay, I don't see any at this time. We'll go over to Seth. Let me get down to unmute you unless Jim already has. Hold on. There you are. All right, you are unmuted, Seth.
Excellent. I'm Seth Burdick, Katuitt resident, Katuitt business owner, current member of the Prudential Committee, 3 years running, and I'm running for reelection to do it again. So I look forward to continuing since I don't have an opponent. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask me now.
Seth, I have one question. There's been some talk in the village and around that you have pulled papers for some town official positions. Is that true?
I did. I pulled papers for the town council, but I haven't 100% decided whether I will be having them filled out. If in the effect, because, I tend to have a lot of things going on, but I haven't really decided one way or the other if it would be a fit, but I'm still thinking about it. In the event that I do run, I would be happy to resign and allow my post on the Prudential Committee to be filled by, it wouldn't be a special election, but it'd be an appointment. But depending on what people were comfortable with and what the feedback would be.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? I've lost my chat preview for some reason. Oh. All right. Next is new candidate David Cherbuck.
Thanks, Carol. And thanks for the chance to introduce myself. This is my first time running for elected office, and I'm a little disappointed not to have an opponent. I actually took out papers because Seth told me one day at the Coop that a seat would be open when Tom Hoppenstadt steps down at the end of his term. And I was concerned, one, that I felt it was my turn to give back to the district, and rather than stop and grouse and worry, to get involved. And my worry and my concerns are not meant to be critical of the water department. I think they do a fantastic job. And my entire life, starting, with one day my grandmother came back to Boston and poured herself a glass of water from the faucet and told me, "This is the best and sweetest and cleanest water you'll ever taste." And she was right. And I think it's remarkable that the commissioners over the year, Chris Wiseman, our superintendent, and his staff have done an outstanding job of ensuring that we've got the quantity of water we need and the quality. But I'm concerned by threats, and the threats that I see, I think the most alarming was when I heard that Little River was going dry on occasion. And that led me to read the consulting report that the Water Commission had drawn up by Sole Source Consulting. And while that made it clear that our pumps aren't drawing their water from Little River, pumping does lower the water table, and as a result, the stream suffers. Jessica and the town council have passed money to study the restoration of Little River, but taken with what happened back in the 90s, some of you will remember the similar situation on the Santuit River, and fingers were pointed and blame was made, but I don't think anyone ever came up with a culprit or a cause. But yet Santuit Pond is considered one of the most compromised ponds on the Cape with cyanobacteria, and Santuit River feeds Shoestring Bay, and anyone who's driven by the bay this week knows that we got a problem. And sure enough, the scientists say that it is the most compromised embayment in the state. So taken together, the water commissioner is not going to solve our nitrogen and phosphorus problem, but I anticipate they're going to have a big role to play when the sewer comes into town, or the DEP amends their Title V regulations and we all have to replace our septic systems. As Mark Robinson said early on, these PFAS contaminants, while they're within acceptable limits, according to the EPA standards for Katuitt, Hyannis has a real problem, and they're looking at a big shortfall and facing what's reported to be a $20 to $25 million new well expense. And we're surrounded by threats. Mashpee in the past has had terrible problems with entire neighborhoods cut off of their drinking water supply by the contaminants flowing from the military reservation. Our sodium levels are high. They're not out of range, but they're high. And the water commissioners have asked the DPW to lay off of the use of road salt on Route 28, which may be contributing. But all in all, I think that we're not close to the edge. We're not under any great threat, but it's a tenuous situation. And if you've ever looked at a situation where a town or even a neighborhood loses its drinking water supply, it's disastrous. From Flint, Michigan to some of the towns I covered as a newspaper reporter in New Hampshire in the 80s, it's devastating what happens if a water system comes under that type of threat. And I just want to learn more, and I want to participate, and I want to have a better understanding of what's causing these issues and what we can do to make things better. Because, in my opinion, the water department and the water commissioners have done an outstanding job. We have 2 new water towers, and every year they invest in keeping, as Mark put it, our pipes and our pumps, in great condition. And I want to keep it that way. So I look forward to your vote next week.
Okay, thank you very much, David, and thank you for stepping up to run for water commissioner. Any questions for David? Seeing no other questions, if anyone else would like to stand as a write-in candidate, could they please enter their name in the chat, and I can call on you to speak as well. And while we give a moment or two for that, I would like to remind everybody that voting will be on Tuesday next week, the 30th, from 4 to 8 at Freedom Hall. Absentee ballots are currently available at the fire station if next Tuesday doesn't work for you. And of course, the annual district meeting is on Wednesday next week, May 31st, starting at 7:30 at Freedom Hall. That's your public service announcement for the night. Okay, I don't see any write-in candidates. So as I call tonight's meeting close, I would again like to thank everybody for their time and attention, and thank all the fire district commissioners and employees who participated tonight. As I said before, it's very helpful to us. And I would like a personal thank you to Jim Danhauser for his Zoom moderating and expertise. This meeting was recorded, and the recording will be up on the Civic Association's website by tomorrow. And the link will be available for posting on the Cotuit Fire District website as well for anyone who wants to watch the meeting again. Or let your friends and neighbors who were not able to join tonight know that there is a recording so that they can watch it at their convenience. With that, I'm going to call this meeting to a close. Good night, and see you all next week.
Good night. Thank you.